Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Desmond Hall. I am 32 years old. And 3 weeks before my wedding, my fiancée Alicia slid a thick manila envelope across our kitchen table. She had this strange, bright smile on her face, the kind you would expect if she was about to surprise me with concert tickets or a weekend trip, not legal paperwork. I set my coffee mug down, feeling a little confused, and asked, "What is this?" Alicia tapped the envelope lightly with one manicured finger and said, "Just some paperwork we need to handle before the wedding. My parents' attorney put together. It is pretty standard stuff." I opened the envelope and pulled out what had to be 30 pages of documents, all neatly clipped together. The title page hit me like a punch, Premarital Agreement, in bold letters at the top. My stomach dipped. Alicia and I had never talked about a prenuptial agreement, not once in 2 years of dating and 10 months of engagement. We had talked about everything else, kids, careers, even whose family we would visit on holidays, but never this. I told myself not to overreact and started reading, eyes moving through the usual legal language and definitions. The first few sections seemed generic. They defined separate property, marital property, income, liabilities. I skimmed through paragraphs talking about jurisdiction and severability, the kind of phrases you only see in contracts. I felt myself relax a little, thinking maybe I'd gotten worked up over nothing. Then I reached section 4. I read it once, frowned, read it again, and then read it a third time to make sure I was not misinterpreting anything. The words on the page did not change. According to that section, the house I had bought 5 years earlier and finished paying off last year, the little 3-bedroom place I had poured weekends and paychecks into, would convert to joint marital property the moment we said our vows. Not in 10 years. Not when we had children. Immediately. My investment accounts, the ones I had started at 22 when I got my first full-time job, would become joint marital property too. The savings account I had carefully built over 6 years was listed, again, as property to be shared. At first I tried to tell myself that maybe this was just how prenups worked, that maybe it was normal to list everything and clarify what would be shared. Then I got to the part about Alicia's debt. It was listed in its own section with bold headings, premarital liabilities. I expected to see a few $1,000s in credit cards, the way she had always mentioned it, casually, like it was annoying but manageable. Instead, the total at the bottom read $80,000. I stared at the number, my heartbeat suddenly loud in my ears. $80,000. I blinked and checked again, tracing each item. There was no mistake. And then section 7 drove the knife in. That section stated that upon marriage, Alicia's premarital debt would become my sole responsibility. Not joint. Not shared proportionally. Mine alone. I sat back in my chair and looked up at her. She was watching me intently, her smile smaller now but still present, like she was waiting for me to nod and say, "Looks good. Is this a joke?" I asked quietly. Alicia tilted her head, eyebrows lifting just a bit. "What do you mean?" she said, still smiling as if I were missing something obvious. I held up the agreement and tapped the page. "This says everything I own becomes ours, but your $80,000 in debt becomes my individual responsibility. Only mine." Alicia shrugged lightly. "Well, yes," she said, in a calm tone that made my skin prickle. "That is what marriage is about. Sharing everything, supporting each other." I laughed once, a short, disbelieving sound, not because anything was funny, but because the audacity felt unreal. "So," I said slowly, "your definition of sharing is me giving you access to everything I have worked for, while taking on debt I did not create?" Her smile faded. A line formed between her eyebrows. "It is not like that, Desmond," Alicia said, her voice sharpening. "You are making it sound bad." I put the papers down on the table and took a deep breath. "Then explain to me how it is supposed to sound." She shifted in her chair, her posture straightening, and her voice took on a practiced tone, like she had rehearsed this speech. "Marriage is about commitment," Alicia said. "It is about showing that you are willing to take on your partner's burdens." My parents explained that a prenup protects both people by making expectations clear from the start. The word protect made something in me snap. "Protects who?" I asked. Because looking at this, it is not protecting me from anything. I am signing away my assets and taking on your debt. How exactly am I protected? Alicia rolled her eyes slightly. You are being dramatic, she said. The debt is not even that much when you think about it long term. It is more than my truck is worth, I replied. It is more than I take home in a year after taxes. That is not that much. Alicia stood up, crossed her arms, and paced a few steps. So what? You are saying you will not help me, she demanded. That is what this is really about. You are being selfish. I forced my voice to stay calm, even though anger was rolling through me. I never said I would not help you. I told her. But this is not help. This is a legal document designed to strip me of everything I've built while making me responsible for debt you had before I even met you. Alicia's eyes flashed. Most of that debt is from family emergencies, she snapped. Medical bills for my mother, helping my sister when she lost her job. You know, I've had a rough few years. That explanation might have worked if I had not already seen the creditors listed in the appendix. If this is medical debt, I said slowly, then why are the statements from department stores, jewelry stores, and an airline credit card? Color rushed into Alicia's cheeks. You do not understand how debt works, she said quickly. Sometimes you have to use one card to pay another. It is complicated. I shook my head. No, I replied. It is actually pretty simple. You spent money you did not have, and now you want me to pay for it. And not only that, you want half ownership of everything I do have. Alicia walked over to the kitchen counter and gripped the edge with both hands, her shoulders rising and falling as she tried to steady herself. When she turned back, her whole demeanor had shifted. The sweetness I had fallen in love with was gone, replaced with something cold and calculating. I already told the photographer we are getting married, she said. I already sent the final payment to the caterer. My dress has been altered. The invitations went out weeks ago. Everything is set. She said it like those facts should override what I had just read. None of that changes what is in this agreement, I said. Alicia stared at me with hard eyes. Then I guess you need to decide what is more important, she replied. Signing a piece of paper or marrying me. I stood up, the chair scraping against the tile, and picked up the agreement again. I flipped through the pages more carefully, reading clauses I'd skimmed before. It got worse. There were provisions requiring me to maintain life insurance policies with Alicia as the sole beneficiary. Clauses making me responsible for her car payments and student loans. The deeper I read, the more it felt like the agreement had been written with one purpose. Turn me into a financial safety net with no safety net of my own. Did you write this yourself? I asked. Or did your parents' attorney actually recommend this? Alicia's jaw tightened. What difference does that make? She shot back. Because no honest attorney would draft something this one-sided unless they were specifically instructed to, I said. And I'm guessing your parents had a lot to say about it. My parents have been married for 30 years, Alicia said sharply. They know what works. They know what it takes to build a strong marriage. I nodded slowly. Your parents also told you to have me sign this without discussing it with me first, I replied. Alicia looked away. She did not answer. When exactly were you planning to mention the $80,000 in debt? I asked. Before or after the wedding? She bristled. I told you I had some credit card balances, she insisted. Some balances? I repeated. You made it sound like $3,000 or $4,000 at most. Not enough to buy a decent used car. Alicia grabbed her phone from the counter. I'm calling my mother, she said. She will explain this better than I can. I felt my temper flare. I do not need your mother to explain why this is ridiculous, I said. Alicia froze mid-dial and stared at me. What did you just say? She asked quietly. I said this agreement is absurd. I answered. And I am not signing it. Alicia lowered her phone slowly. Then there is no wedding, she said. The words fell between us like a threat, as if she had just played a card that would force me to back down. I think she expected me to panic, apologize, maybe reach for a pen. Instead, I held the agreement up so she could see it clearly and tore it in half. Paper ripped with a rough sound that seemed to echo. Then I tore those halves in half again, and again, until a small pile of shredded legal confetti sat on the table. Alicia stared at the pieces, her mouth open. You cannot be serious, she whispered. You are absolutely right, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. No wedding sounds great. She blinked at me, as if waiting for me to laugh and say I was kidding. Well, I did not. Panic flashed across her face. Where are you going? She demanded as I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. Out, I said. I need to think. and I cannot do that while you're trying to guilt me into financial suicide. She followed me to the front door. You are throwing away 2 years over money. Alicia shouted. Over one stupid piece of paper. I turned back to her. No, I said. I am walking away from a person who tried to trap me into debt I did not create while taking half of everything I have worked for. There's a difference. I walked out before she could respond, got into my truck, and pulled away from the curb with my heart hammering. I drove aimlessly through familiar streets for nearly an hour, thinking about every moment of our relationship. As I drove past the park where we had our first picnic, I remembered Alicia talking about how she could not wait to finally relax once we were married. She had laughed and said, "You are so good with money, Desmond. I cannot wait for you to handle everything." At the time, it had sounded like a compliment. Remembering it now, it felt like a warning I had ignored. I thought about the time she had brushed off questions about her credit cards and the way her parents mentioned finances only in vague, sentimental terms about pulling together as a family. By the time the sky started to darken, my anger had cooled into something heavier, a kind of grief. I had been weeks away from committing my life to someone who clearly saw me as a solution to a problem instead of partner. I eventually drove back home, rehearsing what I would say when I saw Alicia again. Maybe we would sit down. Maybe we would talk like adults and find some way to end things cleanly. I pushed open the front door and stepped inside. The silence hit me first. No television, no music playing from her phone in the bedroom, no soft humming from the kitchen. Alicia's shoes were not by the door. Her purse was gone from the little table beside the couch. I walked through the house, a knot forming in my stomach. In the bathroom, her products were gone from the sink and shower. In the bedroom, her clothes were missing from the closet, leaving an empty stretch of hangers where her dresses used to be. On the kitchen counter, her house key lay next to a folded note. I opened the note and read the single sentence written in her familiar, neat handwriting. "Call me when you are ready to talk like an adult." I stared at it for a long moment, then set it down next to the key. I did not call. Instead, I did something I should have done a long time earlier. I went to my desk, powered up my computer, and pulled my credit report. I checked every line, every open account, every address and inquiry. My shoulders loosened slightly when I confirmed she had not opened any joint accounts or added herself to anything of mine. Even relieved, I did not want to take chances. I changed passwords on my banking, email, and investment accounts. Then I placed a fraud alert on my credit file. After that, I went back to the shredded prenup and sifted through the pieces until I found the pages that listed Alicia's debts. She had been careless enough to include the creditor names and partial account numbers, probably assuming that I would sign without looking too closely. I could not access the accounts, but I could see exactly who she owed. The creditors were not hospitals or clinics. They were 3 department stores, 2 jewelry retailers, an airline credit card, a furniture store, and a handful of premium subscription services. There was not a single medical facility in the list. Not one urgent care center. Not one specialist or surgery center. Nothing that supported the story she had given me about family medical emergencies. I sat back, feeling that awful mix of anger and disappointment wash over me again. After a few minutes of staring at the list, I picked up my phone and scrolled to her sister's contact. I had always gotten along well with her younger sister Maya. She was quieter than Alicia, more laid back, and we had spent plenty of family events joking about sports, movies, and work. I sent her a text. "Hey, quick question. Has your mom been sick recently? Any big medical emergencies in the last few years?" The typing bubbles appeared almost immediately. Maya replied, "What? No, Mom is fine. Why? Did something happen?" My chest tightened. I thanked her, said I would explain later, and set the phone down without elaborating. 2 days passed. I ignored Alicia's single text. "Have you calmed down yet?" and went about my routine as best I could. On the 3rd day, my phone rang with a number I recognized but did not want to see. Alicia's father. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity and a stubborn sense of fairness made me answer. "Hello," I said. "We need to talk," he said immediately, skipping any greeting. His voice was deep and serious. "I am listening," I replied, forcing myself to remain calm. "My daughter is devastated," he said. "She has been crying for 2 days straight. You humiliated her, Desmond." I closed my eyes briefly and then opened them, staring out my front window. I humiliated her. I repeated. She tried to trick me into signing away my house and taking on her debt without even discussing it first. He sniffed, clearly unimpressed. That agreement was meant to protect both of you, he said. Protect me from what exactly? I asked. From keeping my own assets? From not being buried in debt I did not create. He sighed like I was being unreasonable. You do not understand how marriage works, he said. When you commit to someone, you take on their burdens. That is what love is. I shook my head, even though he cannot see me. Love is not a financial ambush, I said. And if you think that agreement was fair, then you either did not read it, or you were just as manipulative as she is. Watch your mouth, he snapped. That is my daughter you are talking about. She is not my problem anymore, I replied. She already put deposits down on everything, he pressed. The venue, the catering, the photographer. She is going to lose thousands of dollars. Then she should not have spent money on a wedding before making sure the groom was actually going to show up, I said. You're going to leave her hanging like that, he demanded. You are that selfish. I actually laughed at that, a sharp sound full of disbelief. Selfish, I repeated, because I will not hand over my house and take on $80,000 in debt. Your logic is fascinating. There was a long pause on the line. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted from angry to calculating. What would it take to make this right? He asked. Name your price. The offer made my skin crawl. There is no price, I said. I am not interested in negotiating. The wedding is off. She already told everyone, he said. Family, friends, co-workers. How is she supposed to explain this? That is between her and everyone else, I answered. I would suggest she start with the truth, but something tells me that is not her style. He started to say something else, but I ended the call and blocked his number. Then I blocked her mother's number, because I knew that call was coming next. Later that evening, I got a text from Kendrick, a friend I had known since high school. We were not inseparable, but we grabbed drinks, watched games, and kept up with each other's lives often enough. His message said, Hey man, heard about the wedding. You good? I called him instead of texting back. When he answered, I told him everything. The prenup, the $80,000, the way her parents had pushed it, the call from her father. I laid it all out, my words tumbling over each other. Kendrick listened quietly, only making small sounds here and there to show he was still on the line. When I finally finished, there was a stretch of silence before he said, Des, you dodged a serious bullet. That is beyond wild. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, I said. I'm starting to realize that. Kendrick hesitated. Listen, he said, I do not usually get involved in people's personal business like this, but there is something you should probably know. Do you remember Trayvon Brooks from sophomore year football? I frowned, trying to pull the face from my memory. Yeah, I said slowly. Tall, played wide receiver for a while, transferred schools junior year. That is him, Kendrick said. He was engaged to Alicia about 3 years ago. My grip on the phone tightened. You are serious? I asked. Dead serious, Kendrick answered. I ran into him at a cookout last month, and your fiancée's name came up. He said she tried to pull something similar on him, some kind of financial agreement that was completely one-sided. He did not want to get into details, but he said her and her family were trying to trap him into taking care of debt he did not create. I sat down at my kitchen table, staring at the grain in the wood. Do you have his number? I asked quietly. Yeah, hold on, Kendrick said. A second later my phone buzzed with a text from him, containing Trayvon's contact information. I stared at it for a long moment, torn. Part of me felt like I had all the confirmation I needed. Another part of me needed to hear it from someone who had actually been through it. Finally, I typed a short message introducing myself and explaining that I had been engaged to Alicia and she had recently tried the prenup tactic with me. I asked if he would be willing to talk. His response came back within minutes. Absolutely. Call me whenever. I called him immediately before I could overthink it. As soon as he answered and I said hello, he took a breath and said, So she hit you with a prenup scam too. Hearing someone else call it a scam made my chest tighten. Everything I own becomes joint property. Her debt becomes my responsibility alone, I said. Yeah, Trayvon replied. That is exactly what she tried with me. Except back then it was $60,000, not 80. I guess she's been busy. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my forehead. Her dad called me today, I said, and tried to make me feel guilty about the deposits for the wedding. Told me I was leaving her hanging, that I did not understand what marriage is. Trayvon made a humorless sound that might have been a laugh. "Let me guess," he said. He said something about how marriage means taking on your partner's burdens. How a real man would step up and help. How you should not leave her after she already told everyone. My hand froze. "Word for word," I said. "How did you know?" "Because he gave me the exact same speech 3 years ago," Trayvon said. "Her whole family operates like a script. They have their roles down perfect. She plays the sweet victim who just wants to build a life together. Her parents play the wise couple who understand what true commitment means. And you are supposed to play the fool who signs everything over." I swallowed hard. "Did you ever find out where all that debt actually came from?" I asked. "Oh, I found out," he said. "She has a spending problem she refuses to admit." Trayvon continued. "Designer clothes, expensive dinners, spa packages, first-class plane tickets to visit friends, fancy electronics. She lives like she makes 6 figures when she barely clears $40,000 a year. Her parents enable it because they do the same thing. Her dad drives a luxury car he cannot afford. Her mother redecorated their house twice in 5 years. They are drowning in debt, and they use their daughter's relationships as life rafts." I rubbed my temples. "She told me the debt was from medical emergencies," I said softly. "Her mom being sick, helping her sister when she lost her job." "Yeah, she told me the same story," Trayvon replied. "In my version, her dad needed surgery, and they could not afford it. I felt terrible. I even offered to help directly. That is when she brought up the prenup. Said it would make everything easier and more official. I was young and stupid. I almost signed. My older brother looked at it and told me I would be out of my mind to go through with it." I stared at the wall. "What finally made you walk away?" I asked. "Her reaction when I said no," Trayvon answered. "1 second she was understanding and patient. The next she was screaming that I obviously did not love her, that I was abandoning her family in their time of need, that she had already told everyone we were getting married. Then her mother showed up at my apartment late at night, begging me to reconsider. That is when I knew it was not just her. The whole family was in on it." I sighed heavily. "This is worse than I thought," I said. "Do you want to know the part that still bothers me?" Trayvon asked. "About 6 months after we split, I heard through mutual friends that she was engaged again. Some guy who worked in finance named Elliot. I tried to warn him anonymously. Sent him a message explaining what happened with me. He blocked me. I guess he thought I was just a bitter ex." My voice lowered. "What happened to him?" I asked. Trayvon exhaled. "They got married. He divorced her 14 months later. I ran into his sister at a wedding last year, and she told me everything. Elliot ended up liable for over $70,000 in debt that she racked up during the marriage," Trayvon said. "She hid credit cards from him, opened accounts in both their names, forged his signature on applications. He had to file bankruptcy. His credit was ruined. His sister said he moved back in with their parents to get back on his feet. His life was basically reset because he ignored the warning signs." A cold, heavy feeling settled in my stomach. "You are kidding," I said, even though I knew he was not. "I wish I was," Trayvon replied. "Look, you did the right thing. But do not think this is over. She's going to come back with a new strategy. That family does not just let go of a target. She will either play the heartbroken victim and try to guilt you into coming back, or she will try to cause problems for you out of spite. Maybe both." I swallowed. "What kind of problems?" I asked. "In my case," he said, "she told people I cheated on her. Completely made up. Some people believed it. She also called my boss and claimed I'd taken money from her. Said I was unstable. Nothing stuck, but it was a headache. You are dealing with someone who sees people as resources, not partners," Trayvon continued. "When a resource stops being useful, they either try to squeeze whatever is left, or they try to ruin it so no one else can benefit. Protect yourself. Document everything. Save every text message, every email, every voicemail. If she makes threats, file a police report. Do not try to be nice about it." We talked for another 20 minutes, going over patterns and details. When I finally hung up, I had a much clearer, much darker picture of the person I had almost married. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Alicia. "Can we please talk? I miss you. I think we can work this out." I set the phone face down and made coffee instead of answering. An hour later, another text came in. "My parents want to meet with both of us. They think there has been a misunderstanding. Dinner tonight." I still did not respond. By noon, I had 15 missed calls from her and a voicemail that started with her crying and ended with her yelling about how I was ruining her life. I saved the voicemail in a folder on my phone that I had labeled documentation. That evening, I answered a call from an unknown number because I was expecting a work-related call. "Hello," I said. "Is this Desmond Hall?" A woman asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "Who is this?" "I'm calling from Williams Photography," she said. "We have you listed as the groom for a wedding on the 23rd. My stomach tightened. "Your fiancé called today to cancel," the woman continued, "and she stated you would be handling the cancellation fee." I closed my eyes briefly. "How much is the cancellation fee?" I asked. $5,000, she said. "It is outlined in the contract she signed. Cancellations within 30 days of the event forfeit the entire deposit and incur an additional fee for lost business." I took a breath. "I did not sign any contract with you," I said. "No," she replied, "but your fiancé assured us you would take care of it." She seemed very confident. "She was wrong," I said. "The contract is in her name. Send the bill to her." The woman hesitated. "Technically, the debt is hers," she said, "but she insisted we contact you because you were the one who called off the wedding." "That is true," I said, "but I am not paying for services I never agreed to. If she wants to take me to small claims court over it, she is welcome to try. Otherwise, this is between you and her." The woman sighed. "I understand," she said. "I will note that in her file. Thank you for your time." After we hung up, my phone vibrated again almost immediately with a new text from Alicia. "You are seriously going to leave me with a $5,000 bill after everything I have done for you?" I typed back, "Everything you have done for me, like trying to take my house and dump $80,000 of debt on me. You created this situation. You deal with it." Her reply came back in seconds. "I hate you. I hope you end up alone and miserable." I took a screenshot, saved it in my documentation folder, and then blocked her number and every one of her social media accounts. The next day was the first day my phone was completely quiet. No calls, no texts, no social media pings. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe fully. That peace lasted exactly 3 days. On Thursday afternoon, my boss called. That was not unusual. We talked regularly about project timelines and schedules. What was unusual was his tone. "Hey, Desmond," he said, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." My stomach dropped. "Sure," I said. "What is going on?" "I got a call this morning from a woman who said she's your fiancée," he said. "She told me you're going through some kind of personal crisis and might be behaving erratically at work. She wanted to know if we had noticed anything concerning." I closed my eyes, anger rising again. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her I had no idea what she was talking about, and that your work has been excellent," he said. Then I asked why she was calling me instead of talking to you directly. She hung up. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. "I'm really sorry you got dragged into this," I said. "That is my ex-fiancée. She is not handling the breakup well." "I figured it was something like that," he replied. "I just want to give you a heads up. We get calls like this sometimes when people try to sabotage an ex. If she keeps it up, you might want to think about a restraining order. Situations like this can escalate." After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at my computer screen. Trayvon had warned me. I had hoped he was exaggerating. He was not. That evening, Kendrick texted me again. "Man, did you really cheat on Alicia?" I called him immediately. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Your ex is telling people you called off the wedding because you got caught with someone else," he said. "I just heard it from 2 different people today. I wanted to check with you before I said anything." I laughed bitterly. "No," I said. "There was no cheating. I ended things because she tried to trick me into signing a one-sided prenup and take on her debt." "Yeah, that sounds more like you," Kendrick said. "Just so you know, she's telling the story like you're trying to ruin her reputation because you are embarrassed about what you did." Over the next week, versions of her story spread. In one version, I was secretly gambling and had lost everything. In another, I had joined some kind of strange group and was giving away my assets. None of it was true, but gossip rarely cared about truth. A few mutual friends reached out, some kindly, some nosy. When they asked what happened, I kept my answers simple and neutral. We had very different views about finances and decided to end the engagement. I did not mention the prenup or the debt. I did not drag her name through the mud. I refused to play that game, even while she played it against me. A week later, I received a certified letter in the mail from a law office whose name I did not recognize. Inside was a formal letter demanding that I pay Alicia $15,000 for emotional distress and financial damages related to the canceled wedding. The letter claimed I had made explicit promises about paying for the wedding, that I had encouraged her to make deposits, and that I had maliciously canceled everything at the last minute. It was written in stiff legal language, but underneath it, I recognized the same emotional manipulation. I looked up the law firm's name out of curiosity and was not surprised to discover that it belonged to Alicia's uncle. It was more family pressure dressed up as legal intimidation. I took a clear photo of the letter and texted it to Kendrick with the message, "Is this for real?" He called me almost immediately, laughing. "She actually thinks she can sue you for breaking up with her," he said. "That is unbelievable. I'm not a lawyer, but I know you cannot force someone to marry you or stay engaged. She would have to prove you made a binding contract about paying for the wedding. Even then, it is a stretch." I sat down at my desk and drafted a simple response. I wrote, "I made no financial commitments related to the wedding. All deposits and bookings were made by your client without my knowledge or consent. I will not be paying any amount for her voluntary cancellations. If she wishes to pursue legal action, I will respond and consider filing counterclaims for harassment and defamation." I sent the response by certified mail and kept copies of everything. I never heard back from that attorney. The legal threat stopped, but Alicia did not. She started driving past my house late at night. The first time, I thought it was a coincidence. I stepped outside to take out the trash and saw her car idling at the end of the block. By the time I walked to the curb, she pulled away. The second time, I noticed her car parked across the street with the lights off. She never came to the door. She just sat there. After the third incident, I bought a security camera and installed it above my front door, angled to catch the street. I started saving footage every time her car appeared. In addition to the drive-abys, I began receiving calls from blocked numbers. Sometimes there was silence on the other end. Sometimes there was breathing, and then a click. On social media, I noticed new accounts with generic names trying to add me. I declined every request and took screenshots of their profiles. I created a folder on my computer and started labeling everything with dates and times: call logs, screenshots, photos of her car, copies of the legal letter, the voicemail from my boss conversation about her call. It felt paranoid, but after what Trayvon told me, it also felt necessary. One evening, Kendra came over with takeout, and we sat on my back patio while the sun went down. I showed him the folder on my laptop. He scrolled through it, shaking his head. "This is getting out of hand," he said. "She's obsessed, man." "I know," I replied. "But what am I supposed to do? She has not actually threatened me or damaged anything yet. She is just being creepy." Kendrick leaned back in his chair. "You could still talk to an attorney," he said, "or at least call the police non-emergency line and ask what your options are. That documentation is going to matter if this escalates." 3 more weeks passed. Then, almost overnight, everything stopped. No drive-abys, no block calls, no whispers through friends. The silence felt almost eerie, like the air right before a heavy storm. Part of me was relieved. Part of me wondered what had changed. I got my answer when I received a message request on social media from someone named Khalil Bryant. The profile picture showed a man around my age in a dress shirt, smiling in front of an office building. His message was short. "Hi, my name is Khalil. I think we need to talk about Alicia." I accepted the request and called the number he included. "Thanks for calling back," Khalil said. "I know this is strange. I heard about what happened with you and Alicia through a mutual acquaintance, and I am in a similar situation. I could really use some advice." My chest tightened. "She is engaged to you?" I asked. "Not yet," he said. "We have been dating for about 4 months. She brought up marriage last week. Things have moved very fast. She wants me to meet her parents this weekend and has been hinting about combining finances." I did not hesitate. "Run," I said. "Run right now." Khalil gave a nervous laugh. "It is that bad?" he asked. "You do not know me," I said, "but I am not exaggerating. Let me tell you what happened to me." I spent the next 30 minutes walking him through the entire story. The prenup, the $80,000 in debt, the lies about medical emergencies, the way her parents coordinated with her, the harassment afterward, the legal letter, the attempts to sabotage my job, the drive-abys. I told him about Trayvon and Elliot, about the pattern stretching back years. I left nothing out. When I finished, Khalil was silent for a few seconds. Then he said quietly, "So the story about her father's health is fake?" "Completely," I said. "Her parents have their own financial problems, but not the one she describes. They groom her partners to bail them out." Khalil exhaled loudly. "She told me you cheated on her," he said. "Said you were controlling with money and tried to restrict her spending. She said she had to call off the wedding to protect herself." I rubbed my eyes. "Of course she did," I said. "She has been telling everyone different versions of why we split. None of them are true." "I was actually thinking about proposing next month," Khalil admitted. I had started looking at rings. "I know it hurts," I said, "but you need to get out now, before it gets harder. She is not building a life with you, Khalil. She is positioning you to pay for a life she cannot afford on her own." He was quiet again. "How do I end this without her doing what she did to you?" he asked. "You cannot control how she reacts," I said. "All you can do is be clear and firm. Do not let her guilt you into changing your mind. And whatever you do, save your messages. If she starts spreading lies, you will want a record of what actually happened." "Thank you," Khalil said. "Seriously, I almost walked into this blind." "You are welcome," I said. "And if she moves on quickly to someone else, feel free to give them my number. This pattern needs to stop." We said goodbye, and I hung up feeling a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that someone else might avoid what I had narrowly escaped. Anger that Alicia was still out there repeating the same pattern, just with different names. 2 months later, Kendrick mentioned over wings and a game that Alicia and Khalil had split up suddenly. He ended things right after he met her parents. Kendrick said, "She is telling everyone he stole money from her." Same script, new actor. I shook my head and focused on my own life. I paid off my truck early. I finally booked a trip I had been putting off for years, a week in New Orleans eating good food and walking through the old neighborhoods. I spent more time with friends I had neglected while I was wrapped up in wedding planning. 6 months after I tore up that prenup, my life looked completely different. I had taken a promotion at work that I might have turned down if I had been planning a honeymoon. I had started going to the gym regularly again, not to impress anyone, just to feel better in my own skin. I attended therapy for a few sessions to unpack why I had ignored so many smaller financial red flags in the relationship. I thought about Alicia less and less, until her name felt more like a cautionary tale than a fresh wound. Then Kendrick sent me a screenshot one evening. It was a social media post of Alicia with a new man, smiling with her hand on his chest, a ring visible on her finger. The caption read, "So excited to spend my life with you, Terrell." I stared at the photo. "Fast worker," I said aloud. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to tell myself this was no longer my business. Another part of me remembered how grateful Khalil had been for the warning. I found Terrell's profile and sent him a simple message. "I do not know you, but I dated your fiancée 2 years ago. If she has mentioned a prenup or combining finances, I think we should talk." He responded within an hour. "I appreciate you reaching out," he wrote. "What is this about?" I sent him my number and asked if he felt comfortable calling. He did. His voice sounded wary but curious. "So what is going on?" Terrell asked. "She told me her last fiancé had anger issues." I took a breath and told the story again. It did not get easier to repeat, but it did get clearer. I walked him through the prenup, the debt, the pattern, the way things had escalated. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. "She already mentioned a prenup," Terrell said slowly. "Said her parents wanted us to be protected. She also told me there were some old debts from family emergencies she was working through." I did not press her on the details. "You should," I said. "You should press very hard." There was a long pause. Then Terrell said, "Thank you, Desmond. I'm going to handle this." The next day, Kendrick texted me again. "She and Terrell are done. She's telling people you're stalking her and sabotaging her relationships." I just shook my head and went back to my work. Alicia called me from a new number that afternoon. I did not answer. She left a voicemail that was 2 full minutes of rage. She accused me of ruining her life, of interfering where I had no right, of destroying her chance at happiness. She promised that I would pay for this someday. I saved the voicemail and dropped it into the digital folder with all the other evidence. Then I blocked that number too. The folder had become its own strange record of everything I had escaped. Over the next year, Alicia faded into the background of my life. Every once in a while, Kendrick or another mutual acquaintance would mention hearing that she had moved to another state. Apparently, she had taken a job somewhere in the Midwest and was posting photos in new restaurants and shopping centers, smiling with people I did not know. I did not feel sympathy or anger by then. Mostly, I felt distance. She had chosen a path, and I had stepped off it just in time. Sometimes I would think back to that morning in my kitchen when she slid the manila envelope across the table with that bright, excited smile. That piece of paper was supposed to be my trap. It was supposed to be the quiet moment where I signed away my savings, my house, my security, and tied myself to someone who viewed me as a wallet with a heartbeat. Instead, it became the moment everything changed. I read carefully. I asked questions. I said no. When I thought about the photographer's $5,000 cancellation fee that she tried to shift onto me, I could only feel one thing: gratitude. Not gratitude for the bill itself, but for the fact that I had not paid it. For the fact that I had not paid for the wedding, the honeymoon, the new credit cards, the car she wanted to upgrade after the wedding, the emergency expenses that would have appeared out of nowhere. It was the best $5,000 I never spent. I still keep that documentation folder. It sits on my hard drive and on a backup drive, buried under other files, a quiet archive of text messages, screenshots, emails, and voicemails. I almost never open it now. I do not need to relive what happened. I keep it because it reminds me of how close I came to losing everything I had worked for. It reminds me that sometimes the most important decisions you make are not the grand gestures, but the quiet ones, like putting down a pen, standing up from a table, and walking away. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.